Koutou, katoa, kia ora, haere mai. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's webinar. The Kapiti Coast District Council is proud to take you through a presentation with regards to our 2024 representation review. I'm joined tonight by our Deputy Mayor, Lawrence Kirby, our Paikakariki Raumati Ward Councillor, Sophie Handford, our General Counsel, Sarah Wattie, as well as senior staff from our comms and engagement team. So tonight we're going to start off with a presentation and we'll take you through the slides. It's going to be a joint effort tonight. I'm very pleased and honoured to be the MC tonight. And amongst all of us, we'll be taking you through a presentation. So we'll go through the presentation, but please do engage with us through the Q&A function at the bottom. What we'd like to do is we'd like to go through the presentation and we'll be looking at the Q&As, and what we'll do is we'll get to the end of the presentation, end of the slides, and we'll answer as many questions as we possibly can. Tonight's session is only 45 minutes long, so we'll do our very best to answer all your questions. So kicking off, we have a little bit of housekeeping tonight. Just for your information, we are actually recording tonight's webinar, and it will be made available on the council website in a couple of days, so that you can, if you miss anything, you may actually watch it at your leisure, or anyone who's missed tonight's webinar will certainly be able to watch a rerun of that. As I've said, please do engage with us through your Q&A, through the Q&A function. We will answer as many questions as we can. Tonight's webinar is about the 2024 representation review. So please do keep your questions on topic. It is about the representation review tonight only, and not about other council matters. And please do keep your questions respectful and in a polite tone. Very importantly, the questions or your comments tonight on this webinar are not going to be taken as formal submissions. If you would like to make a submission on the representation review, please do so. And you can do that either online, or you could do that at our libraries or our service centres. So the representation review. So the council has a duty to ensure fair and effective representation of our communities. So what does fair mean? Well, fair means that our general ward councillors must represent our community fairly, and it must be similar in number. So this is what we call the plus or minus 10% rule. So across the Kapiti district, there's a quota, which is basically the population divided by the number of ward councillors we have. And that really gives us a measure of how many people each ward councillor should be representing. And we can go under or over by a 10% threshold. And that is our measure to make sure that our representation is fair and consistent across the district. Legislation requires that we do a representation review every 6 years. Some legislation was changed in 2021, and that gave councils the ability to consider, to vote on and establish a Māori ward without a poll. Kapiti Coast District Council made this decision in November 2023 to establish a Māori ward, which will come into effect for our 2025 election period or triennium. By doing this, by creating a Māori ward, this actually did trigger a representation review, as currently our representation structure doesn't have a Māori ward. So by establishing a Māori ward, we had to do a representation review, and hence this is our 2024 representation review. And the outcome of that representation review must be in place for the 2025 to 2028 triennium. A representation review is an opportunity for the council to engage and to consult with the community on all representation arrangements, including ward and community ward boundaries. So there's been some very recent changes to legislation. New legislation came into effect on the 30th of July 2024, and this was in relation to Māori wards. What this legislation has required councils across the country to do is to reaffirm or rescind their decision to establish a Māori ward only for those councils that did that without a poll. Kapiti Coast District Council considered the matter and reaffirmed its decision to establish a Māori ward for the 2025-28 triennium on the 6th of August 2024. The decision to reaffirm the Māori ward has already been made by the council, and then other than discussing and determining the boundary of the Māori ward, the decision to either rescind or affirm the Māori ward is out of scope for this representation review. Because the council has decided to affirm the Māori ward, during the 2025 elections, we are required to hold a poll to determine if the Māori ward is retained for the 2028 and 2031 elections. We are doing a representation review in 2024. The consequence of the council affirming its decision to have a Māori ward in 2025 did trigger a representation review. And so we will continue to do this representation review, which is in train at the moment. The council on the 30th of July voted on a proposed structure, and that's what we're consulting on at the moment. So we're actually asking for you to consider our proposed structure, and we're asking for your feedback and inviting you to submit on the council proposals. Over to you, Lawrence.
Thanks, Mark, and kia ora koutou. Welcome to this webinar. It's great to be able to communicate with you about this rep review and to invite your submissions on your opinions and your thoughts around it. As Mark has previously mentioned, this rep review is mandated by legislation. To date, as a council, we've made and reaffirmed our decision to establish a Māori ward. We also undertook community engagement earlier this year to get an idea of what other changes you might want as our community to our current representation arrangements. In that consultation and community engagement from earlier this year, we received 285 submissions, with the majority of those indicating that the current arrangements for representation work well, and that the idea was that we incorporate the Māori ward into the current council structure without any major changes. The majority also supported retaining the current councillor to community board appointment structure. And based on this feedback, we're now consulting with the community on this, our proposed council structure for the 2025 local government elections. This is what we are calling our initial proposal. And our consultation on this initial proposal is open until the 5 p.m. on the 12th of September. Sorry, that's 5 p.m. on the 12th of September. So now I want to just quickly run you through what our current council structure is, and then what our initial proposal is in regards to what our structure could be, depending on the outcome of your submissions in this process for the 2025 election. So the current council structure, as you can see from the slide in front of you, we currently have one mayor. We have four general wards covering the district: Otaki, Waikanae, Parapara Umu, and Paikakariki Raumati. Those four general wards are represented by 7 elected councillors. And as you can see on the diagram, those elected councillors are broken up according to population in each of those wards to work according to, as Mark mentioned, the plus or minus 10 representation for fair representation. So that's why that's there. There is also 3 councillors who are elected at large district-wide. So that's our current structure of our councillors. So there's 10 elected councillors and 1 mayor. We also have 5 community boards covering Otaki, Waikanai, Parapara-umu, Paikakariki, and Raumati. And each of those community boards has 4 elected members each. And there are a specified number of ward councillors that are appointed back to each of these community boards. So if you do your maths on that, there's 31 elected representatives across the Kapiti Coast District with our current council structure. 20 of those are community board members, 10 are councillors, and 1 mayor. That's our current council structure. So now, under our initial proposal, this will be our proposed council structure. As I said, we've listened to the engagement early in this year, and we've tried to keep the structure as close as we can to our current structure. So the only change in this is there will be the removal of 1 district-wide councillor to be replaced with a Māori ward councillor. That's the proposed, so that's our initial proposal. The details there are again on the diagram. There'll be one mayor, 4 general wards representing, electing 7 councillors, 2 district-wide councillors, 1 Māori ward councillor, and then 5 community boards with 4 elected members on each. And again, a specified number of ward councillors appointed to the boards. So that's our proposed council structure, our initial proposal. That's the one that we are asking for your submissions and your input into that proposal. At the local government elections on the 11th of October next year, 2025, those on the general roll will still vote for the mayor, their community board members, and their general ward councillors or councillors. They'll also vote for 2 district-wide councillors, as opposed to the 3 in our current structure. Those on the Māori ward will vote for the mayor, their community board members, and the Māori ward councillor, rather than a general ward councillor. Those enrolled on the Māori roll will also vote for the 2 district-wide councillors. Regardless of who you vote for, it's important to remember that all councillors swear to execute and perform their duties in the best interests of the entire Kapiti Coast District, whether you're elected district-wide as a Māori ward councillor or as a general ward councillor. We are all acting on behalf of our entire district. So just to summarise that again, the proposed structure, this is our initial proposal. Keep the number of councillors to 10. So we're working on our feedback that we received earlier in the year to make minimal changes to our structure. That's very clear there for you on the paper, we hope. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask us around that. And we'll come back to these further on through the presentation. But please, if you want to make a formal submission, please do so through our Have Your Say page. And just a reminder, the Māori ward is confirmed. It will be happening. The review is about how we will integrate it into our proposed arrangements. So I'm going to now hand it on to Councillor Handford, and she's going to take you through some of the other parts of this, our initial proposal.
Great. Kia ora, Lawrence. And yeah, no, mai haere mai. Great to have you all with us on what has become now quite a rainy evening. When we started this webinar, it was not pouring with rain. So hopefully you're all safe, warm and dry. So kia ora, ko Sophie Handford tō koingoa. And I'm now going to chat a little bit more about another part of our proposed changes. So with the establishment of the Māori ward, we also need to determine the ward's boundary. And we're proposing that boundary for the Māori ward would be the entire district. We're also proposing ward boundary changes for Otaki, Waikanai, Parapara-umu, Raumati and Parapara-umu. With the proposed ward boundary changes, the associated community board boundaries change too. But the exception is Raumati Community Board, which would remain the same. It does remain the same under our initial proposal. These proposed boundary changes have primarily come from community feedback following the Local Government Commission's decisions during our last representation review process, and also from members of the Paikākariki and Te Horo communities since the 2022 elections. So just to take you through a little bit more, I guess, as to what these proposed boundary changes will mean and who they might affect. So these proposed changes may affect which general ward you vote in. However, the number of councillors in each general ward will not change. Represented population numbers for all general wards reduce slightly, as the new Māori ward has approximately 5,000 voters on the Māori electoral roll currently, which equates to one Māori ward councillor, but also there will be the opportunity for those who wish to be on the Māori roll to make that switch, and so that number may change slightly. In most cases, these proposed boundary changes will improve the plus or minus 10% rule for representation, as both Mark and Lawrence referred to, in terms of equitable and just representation for everyone in our community, no matter whereabouts along our string of pearls you might be based. So if we look to Ōtaki and Waikanae General Ward and Community Board and the boundaries for both the ward and the boards, the community boards, we're proposing to move the Ōtaki and Waikanae General Ward and Community Board boundaries further south past Te Hapua Road. Now, if you can't see very well on this map exactly where that line is, don't worry, I'm sure this webinar is being recorded, as Mark mentioned, and the slides will be made available through that format. And this proposed change will reverse what was put in place by the Local Government Commission, which actually divided Te Horo in two, and we have had quite strong feedback from members in the Te Horo community. So we look forward to hearing more of that, no matter what view you might hold through this submission process. Ōtaki will still be underrepresented by 11.32%, with the average population of 9,320 reduced to 8,510 people represented by one councillor. Waikanae will still be slightly overrepresented, with two councillors representing an average of 6,900 people each. We acknowledge that our proposed changes to the boundary between Ōtaki and Waikanae wards still doesn't quite meet the plus or minus 10% rule, but we are able to make this change through our initial proposal. However, our final proposal will need to be referred to the Local Government Commission to consider our district's final representation arrangements, and they ultimately have that final word. So now an area kind of close to my heart as the Paikākariki Ward Councillor. We are proposing to move the Paikākariki and Parapara-Umu General Ward boundaries slightly, which will also change the boundaries for the Paikākariki and Parapara-Umu community boards. These proposed changes will also reverse a decision made by the Local Government Commission, which we've heard goes against residents' wishes in areas such as Emerald Glen and Valley Road. And we're looking forward to again hearing from those affected communities through the submission process. Paikākariki will still be underrepresented by 8.58%, with 8,300 people represented by one councillor. And Parapara-Umu will be overrepresented, with three councillors representing an average of 7,633 people each. But there's only a small overrepresentation of minus 0.14%. The Raumati Community Board will not change. However, the area of the Paikākariki Community Board will grow slightly to, again, encompass those Emerald Glen and Valley Road properties. It looks like a big change, but this, on the map, you might be able to notice, but this area is semi-rural, so the number of people within that proposed newly encompassing area is not large. So everyone is welcome to submit on these proposed boundary changes. However, we do appreciate that our proposed general ward boundary changes directly affect about 600 residents. So we have really tried to do our best to make sure that those residents are aware of these proposals and encourage them also to submit directly, considering They are likely to be the ones most affected, and some of you joining us now may well be some of those residents too. So encourage you, if you're in one of those areas, if you see a real cause for concern to your community of interest, whether you're in Paikakiri, Hiromati, Te Horo, or Taki, really do put that through the submission process. We're also working with mana whenua in terms of the proposed Māori ward boundary and also the potential name of the ward. And just mentioning again that in the initial proposal, we are putting forward that the ward boundary for the Māori ward would be the whole district. So I'll now pass back over to Lawrence.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sophie. We're almost there. There's a lot of talking and a lot of slides so far. Thanks for those who've joined us and continue to stick with us as we get this through. We've just got a little bit more about the community boards. Community boards work with ward councillors to represent your interests. They are very much closely interacting with their local communities that they represent and are a huge part of the representation arrangements for the Kapiti Coast District. They have delegated authority for some things, such as awarding local grants, but they can't vote at council. Under our current representation arrangements within council, we do have community board members who are active in most of our council meetings and committee meetings and workshops and things, and they provide us with an important voice of our communities. And we're proposing to retain the current 5 community boards with 4 elected members each, as well as keeping the current councillor to community board appointment structure. With the proposed boundary changes that Sophie has so succinctly described for you, there will be some community board changes, boundary changes as well. They generally relate to those other ones, the other changes for the wards. But you'll have to look at the maps for the finer detail and be able to submit on those. The new council will decide if the new Māori ward councillor and or the general ward councillors should be appointed to community boards. So that's pretty much our representation review in a nutshell. We appreciate we've been through quite a bit of detail and it's been in a short time. Hopefully we've given you enough detail to help you with any questions you might have and so that you can make an informed submission. Please join us this Saturday at the Parapara Umu Library between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. if you'd like to chat in person. We will have some elected members there along with some staff to be able to help walk you through how you can submit to this, our initial proposal in this representation review. Our consultation is open until 5 p.m. on the 12th of September. And there's an opportunity if you'd like to talk to your submission on our hearings on the Tuesday, the 24th of September. Your feedback, as always, is an important part of our decision-making as a council. Legislatively, in this particular situation, we have a very short turnaround and need to make our final decision on representation arrangements for the 2025 local government elections on the 31st of October this year. There will be an opportunity for people to make an appeal or an objection to our final proposal if they disagree with it. The principle, having said that, the principle of the Māori ward cannot be appealed. The decision made by the Commission after they receive our final proposal will be given no later than the 10th of April 2025. I think we have a few minutes to spare, so I'll hand it back to Mark and we'll see what's come through on the question and answers, and we can answer any of those that may be there. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kirby and Councillor Handford. Look, we do have a question. We do have a number of you that have tuned in tonight, so thank you very much for that. We do have a question. It was actually touched on earlier in a slide by Deputy Mayor Kirby. So I'll read the question, and what I'm going to propose is I'm going to hand over to Lawrence just to reiterate what he said, and then we'll just see if there's anything that needs to be added to that by our General Counsel, Sarah Wattie. So the question is, can people vote in Māori wards and a local ward?
Probably a pretty quick answer to that. No, if you were a Māori ward or on the Māori electoral roll, you can only vote in the Māori ward. You cannot vote in one of the general wards as well. So just to reiterate, if you are on the Māori electoral roll, you can vote for a Māori ward councillor, the mayor, the 2 district-wide councillors that are available, and your direct community board as to where you are residing. So that's where that sits. If you are on the general roll, you cannot vote for the Māori ward councillor. You will vote for your general ward plus your community board, 2 district-wide councillors, and the mayor. I hope that makes that very clear for you. Whether Sarah has any more to add to that?
Nothing to add.
Great, thanks for that question. I hope my answers made that clear for you in regards to how this initial proposal and the representation review is pointing us towards for that work. Have we got anything else, Mark, in terms of questions?
Lawrence. Thank you, Lawrence and Sarah. Yes, we have another question that's come in. Please keep your questions coming in. So question number 2, have the numbers represented in each of the proposed new wards taken into account projected growth in those areas? Now, Sarah, would you like to start the answer of that one?
Kia ora koutou. The short answer is no. So there are clear requirements under the Local Electoral Act for what the numbers need to take into account in terms of the plus or minus 10% rule. So Council can consider a range of factors in the representation review, and projected growth might be one of the things that Council could take into consideration in thinking about whether to depart from the plus or minus 10% rule, particularly when we're looking at that Otaki Waikanae boundary, where there is a slight change, but it wouldn't be the primary. The primary factor would be do the representation arrangements give effect to the communities of interest, and the fair representation, which is plus or minus 10%.
I think, Mark, you might want to unmute yourself, Mark, so that we can hear what you're saying, your words of wisdom.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Sarah. I was just adding that Council tabled the formal report on the 30th of July, and in that report had quite a lot of detailed information with regards to that question. So I'm just looking. I'm not seeing any more questions being posted. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I might just maybe use this time to just also touch on an important part of our consultation engagement session. Maybe just adding to what Councillor Handford said, just regards to the proposed boundary changes. So part of this consultation is we really do want to hear from members of our community that are directly impacted by those boundary changes. So there has been targeted letterbox drops, and efforts have been made to actually really get feedback from our residents that would be impacted by those changes, so that our councillors can hear firsthand from those people what they think. Now I'm just going to check. So there's no questions. Just another plug for Saturday, as the Deputy Mayor has already said. There's a drop-in session at the Paraparaumu Library. It's from 10 a.m. to midday. That's another opportunity to come and hear about what the proposal means and to ask lots of questions. So that's going to be a very exciting session. And if you would like to attend, please do attend. Just as this is sort of our final wrap-up, we would like to hear from you. We would like you to have your say. You can do that online via our website, as well as you could hand in your submission in person at our libraries and service centres, And then, as I've just said, and has been said in tonight's webinar, that there is a drop-in session on Saturday from 10 a.m. to midday at the Paraparaumu Library, where you can speak to elected members as well as staff, and we're happy to answer any questions you have. We have another question. So thank you. Please keep your questions coming through. I realise that the Māori Ward survey voted heavily against the Māori Ward, and yet Council voted it in. That is... Yep. So look, we've removed that question has just been removed. We said that out of scope of this review is the Māori Ward. We've heard from the Deputy Mayor that Council has already made that decision. So we're not going to answer questions about that on tonight's webinar. If you have any more questions, please do come through, and I'm going to hand over to Councillor Handford.
Hi, sorry, Mark. I just wanted to add one more thing to that response as well. I think, as was mentioned by the Deputy Mayor, I believe that at the next election there will be a poll on this very subject as to whether the Māori Ward should exist beyond just this one traineum that Council has essentially decided to reaffirm its decision for it to exist in these next 3 years following the 2025 election, but there will be a poll at the next election, and that is when, if you have views one way or another on the Māori Ward, it'll be a very democratic process in that the poll will be binding upon Council, and so that is the opportunity for now any sort of views on the Māori Ward to be exercised is through that poll at the next election.
Thank you, Councillor Handford. Absolutely. We've had a question coming through the chat session. The question is, where can I make a formal submission? Deputy Mayor Lawrence Kirby, would you like to answer that one?
Love to. Online, as it is right in front of you, is one way that you can have your say. The other one is you can submit directly into our service centres and our libraries across the district. There are hard copies of the submission forms that you can pick up there, fill them out yourselves if you're not wanting to do it online, or you can drop in person to the library in Paraparaumu this Saturday and record your formal submission at that time, as well as ask any questions you may have. So we're trying really hard to give you as many opportunities and options on how you can submit, because we do want to hear your voice around this, our initial proposal. So thank you for being here and watching. Appreciate your time tonight. Or whenever it is you watch it. It could be during the day. So appreciate your time whenever that is. Thank you.
Right. Look, from me, I've just had a look at the chat. I've just had a look at the Q&A input field. It doesn't look like there's any other questions for us to answer. There's no chat for us to answer. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to, first of all, thank our Deputy Mayor, Lawrence Kirby, and Councillor Handford for being on the webinar tonight. I'd like to thank our General Counsel, Sarah Wattie, and support of our senior comms team to make tonight possible. I'd like to thank our audience for tuning in tonight. We really value your time. I hope you have found this valuable. And as this will be recorded, this is being recorded, and this will be made available on our website in a day or two. So thank you so much. Stay warm and dry and have a very pleasant evening. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, ka kite.
Ka kite.